When the giants tower over my faith, and I'm frozen by the battles I face, there is just one place I go to be saved. In the shelter of your wings, you cover me, and a tear my rescued heart begins to sing. There is just one place I go to be saved. Oh, you're the only one that I call home. There is nowhere else I'd rather go. You're the only one that I call home. Oh, there is nowhere else I'd rather go. You're the only one that I call home. In the arms, in the arms, in the arms of Jesus. You never fail, you're my strong tower. In the arms, in the arms, in the arms of Jesus. You'll never fail, you're my strong tower.
Waking up to a new sunrise, looking back from the other side. I can see now with open eyes, darkest water and deepest pain. I wouldn't trade it for anything, 'cause my brokenness brought me to you, and these wounds are a story you'll use. So I'm thankful for the scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart. Now I'm standing in confidence with the strength of your faithfulness. And I'm not who I was before. No, I don't have to fear anymore. So I'm thankful for the scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart. And I know they'll always tell of who you are. So forever I am thankful for the scars. I can see how you delivered me. In your hands, in your feet, I found my victory. I can see how you delivered me. In your hands, in your feet, I found my victory. I'm thankful for your scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart. And with my life I'll tell of who you are. So forever I am thankful. I'm thankful for the scars, 'cause without them I wouldn't know your heart. And I know they'll always tell of who you are. So forever I am thankful for the scars. So forever I am thankful for the scars.
Sometimes it's hard to breathe. All these thoughts that shout at me, try to bring me to my knees, and it's overwhelming. Darkness echoes all around. Feels like everything is crashing down. Still I know where my hope is found, and it's only you and you say you're working everything for my good, and I believe every word. 'Cause even in the madness, there is peace, drowning out the voices all around me. Through all of this chaos, you are right.
before. Music don't, from all my unruly notes. The distance is distant, it's moving close. Now I see, erase the scales from my eyes. Then play the scale of my life. Chaos played off with a chord and a chord with a source, prevented through strife. And I've tasted suffering, I've been embraced by the painful buffering. I've been bound by doubt so loud right now, but a melody is made when you play these rusty keys. So we all gotta get pressed, tuned up like instruments. But I know all of life's tempo is set whenever we remember this.
Even in the madness, there's peace, drowning out the voices all around me. Through all of this chaos, you are writing a symphony, a symphony. And even in the madness, there's peace, drowning out the voices all around me. Through all of this chaos, you are writing a symphony, a symphony. Oh, oh, oh.
Good morning, everyone. We encourage you to join us in worship as we worship the only God who is worthy of everything that we can say, sing, or give in terms of our praise.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Jesus, your name. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Yes, Lord, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside
love would so fill us that it spreads through those around us. Lord, that we would learn to build our lives on your love, because when love is our foundation, that is what comes out of our homes. That is what comes out of our families. So Lord, that is what we seek today. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes, oh Lord, show me who you are. Show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone. You are not shaken easily, God. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late, He's working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh, yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will.
glorify the name of all names, that nothing can stand against, and I choose to pray, to glorify the name of all names, that nothing can stand against. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy on my lips. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
An amazing thing about God is you can walk down a road 1,000 times. You can feel like you're just retreading the same old mistakes. You feel like you're just living under the same rock. You're just going through the same rut. You're walking on the same treadmill that you have for so long. And yet, when you offer that thing, whatever it is, to God, He has a way of just snapping you sometimes out of it, helping you see the big picture, helping you learn to trust Him. He has a way of breaking the chains that are holding you to whatever anchor is dragging you down. So as we wrap up our worship set, it's my hope that in your heart and in your mind, you will just say, God, I've got this thing. I've got this rut. I've got this bad habit. I've got this anchor. And if you've got something, give it to God today. Let Him challenge the chains that are holding you and show you what freedom can look like. Freedom from shame, freedom from guilt, freedom to live.
If you've been walking the same old road for miles and miles, if you've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies, and if you're trying to fill the same old holes inside, then there's a better life. There's a better life. If you got pain, He's a pain taker. If you feel lost, He's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, He's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, He's a chain breaker. We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night. We've all found ourselves worn out from the same old fight. We've all run and think we know it just ain't right. Oh, there's a better life. There's a better life. You got pain, He's a pain taker. If you feel lost, He's a way maker. If you need freedom or saving, He's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, He's a chain breaker. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify. If you believe it, if you receive it, if you can feel it, somebody testify, testify. If you believe it, if you receive it,
LifePoint family. I'm still Tilly.
And I'm still Andrew.
And we're so glad that you took the time to join us this morning. Whether in person or online, it's going to be a great time together.
And if you're new to joining us, we just want to say hello and say that we're glad that you're here and taking some time out of your day to hang out with us.
And speaking of hanging out, if you're joining us in person, there's going to be a bunch of canopies out in the parking lot after the service for a socially distant, safe, outdoor connection zone where you guys can grab a water bottle and catch up with each other and create that community that we've all been missing.
And if you're watching live online with us this morning, don't feel left out. We'd love for you to join us before or after our live stream on Sunday mornings for our digital lobby. Now, this is a time period of about 10 to 15 minutes before and after the service where our chat is open online. Now, this is a great time to check into the chat, introduce yourself if you're new, and just generally catch each other up and continue to build that community through our online church.
Whether it be online or in person, we as a church are so excited to connect with you and get to know you more.
We're also excited to let you know that coming up July 26th, our LifePoint riders are going out for their first motorcycle ride of the season. They're leaving from the church parking lot at 1:30 p.m. after second service. So we'd love to see you come out. If you're a rider and want to get out and get some wind in your hair, we'd love to see you.
And before we go, we just want to give a big thank you to everyone who has generously given financially to support LifePoint's mission over the past few months especially. And if you'd like to contribute, there are several ways that you can do so. You can give online, mail a check to the church, and if you're in person, you can drop it in the black boxes as you exit the service.
Up next, we have our Worship Pastor John Engel bringing this week's message as a part of our Building a Great Life series. So let's dive in together.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is awesome. Wow, that was a great response. You guys are awake. It is great to actually be here in front of living, breathing human beings in the same room. That's really cool. The last 4 times, maybe 3 times that I've spoken, there was an empty room and it was a little weird, but it's really great that you're here. And if you're watching online, thank you for joining us as well. And hopefully you are also living and breathing. It is really great to be with you. We want to welcome you to LifePoint Church, and we want that welcome to feel warm. So hopefully you feel welcome today. Now, after drawing straws to determine who would be speaking what messages during this series, I picked adultery. Yay me. So, all kidding aside, adultery is a serious problem, and it's a very serious topic. Now, just for reference, so that we have a starting point, the Bible talks about the biblical commandment of do not commit adultery in Exodus 20:14. Guess what it says about it? It says, do not, yeah, that's it. Do not commit adultery. There is no introduction, there is no follow-up. It just says, don't do it. Sort of like when your mom or dad would say, don't touch the hot stove. Don't do it. Now, most of us feel like, we understand exactly what adultery is. It's when you're married and you have sex with someone that isn't your spouse. Pretty simple. But Greg, he shared last week that he had a message on stealing, and he shared that there's actually 3 phases, if you will, to stealing. I saw something that didn't belong to me. I wanted the thing that didn't belong to me. I took the thing that didn't belong to me. The sin didn't occur when we saw it. The sin occurred when we wanted it. It happened before we took it. Same sort of thing is true here with adultery. See, we think that the sin starts when the sex starts. That's how that works, right? But the Bible seems to indicate otherwise. Matthew 5:27 through 28 says, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And that applies to men. You can interchange the genders there because lust is a universal problem. Uh-oh. So that means There's a sin that happens even before the sexual act. This photo, I actually was tempted today, because it's such an awkward topic, to just put that photo up and then go home, because I feel like that sort of summarizes the problem. A lot of memes based on this photo, but if you can keep that up for a while, Crystal. You see this lady in red, she's walking, and this couple here, they were going the other way. It's obvious that these two groups have crossed paths, right? Now, was the sin that the guy and the girl on the right here, that they saw her? No, I mean, we'd all look really dumb walking around like this all the time to avoid sin, right? The sin is, what do? He took a second glance, and the expression on his face says he's looking at her a lot differently this time. So, maybe there's a difference between seeing and seeking, between looking and lusting. Now, I'm going to guess here that for those of you who are married, when you were saying your wedding vows, you didn't do something like, honey, I'm going to love you forever unless someone else better comes along. Honey, I'm going to love you forever until it gets hard. I'm going to love you unless we're poor. By the way, if you're planning to get married and planning to write your own vows, leave that part out. It will be a good idea. Sadly, we don't really think too hard when we're getting married about the fact that 30% of marriages will have one of the spouses cheat on the other. That's 30%. We'll let that sink in for a minute. Because that's just the sexual sin. When you start counting in like things that the Bible talked about, like the extramarital flirting, this random meetups, that number goes to north of 50%. That's 1 in 2 if you're struggling with math sometimes like I do. 1 in 2. And I would love to stand in front of all of you today and say, man, it's so much better in the church. We're like 5%, 6%. We're only like 1 or 2% different. 1 or 2%. It's good that we are better, but we're not that much better. Now, maybe we're here today and we're like, man, this is an odd topic for a global pandemic. I mean, where are you going to meet people to lust after? You can't go anywhere. And you know what? Maybe there's some validity to that. I mean, you're not going to go out to the club. You're not going to go out to the bar. You're not going to just be around a ton of people that you might lust after, right? And I mean, maybe that's true. But what if the things that lead to adultery are amplified? And that's what we're finding out. That's what research is starting to show us. Because right now, most married people are spending a lot more time with their spouses. Now, that may not be the case for you. Maybe your work scenario hasn't changed much. Maybe your home is pretty much the same as it always has been, and that's great. But it is true for a lot of us. And maybe, through a temporary layoff, maybe through a furlough or a job termination, or maybe just because you've made a home office or you've rearranged schedules, you are around your spouse a whole lot. What happens when you start to get closer to someone? When you start to spend more time with them? You don't fall off the stage. When you get closer to someone, you start to notice things. Maybe when you got married, you said, man, I'm so glad that my spouse is just laid back and easygoing. Nothing really gets them riled. It's so good. It's so less stressful. And now you're spending 3 months with them. You say, man, my spouse is lazy. What do they do all day? They're not motivated. Nothing gets them passionate. They're not passionate about anything, much less me. Maybe you were in the party that said, man, I love this about my spouse, that they are so committed to making sure everything is exactly right. They just love the details. They want to make sure that everything is lined up, that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. I love it. And then you spent 3.5 months with them. And now it's like, man, when did my spouse get so nitpicky? When did they get so obsessive? I don't know that I can ever measure up to what they expect of me. Maybe one of the things that you thought really made your marriage strong, really made you a well-rounded person, was that your spouse had one political idea and you had another one. But yet you were always able to come to a middle ground somewhere and come up with this really cool way of thinking, and it really brought you closer together. And then you had to spend 3.5 months with them during this political, chaotic turmoil. And you've realized that that person supports the literal definition of evil now. Every time they vote, the world turns to ash. What has happened? And in fact, you're finding that the more time you spend, the closer you get, the less certain you are that your spouse is really able to meet your needs. Now, we all have foibles. We all have little things that we do that annoy our spouses from time to time, but it can kind of ramp up when there's no escape. It's either deal with it or don't deal with it, and it builds. And when it builds, the precursors for adultery start to stack up. They start to overwhelm you. And it makes it ever easier to compromise the marriage that you've built. Much, much easier to wander into the sin of adultery and give up.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
I'll be the one if you want me to.
Anywhere I would have followed you.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
And I'm feeling so small. It was over my head. I know nothing at all. And I will stumble and fall. I'm still learning to love, just starting to crawl. Say something, I'm giving up on you. Sorry that I couldn't get to you. Anywhere I would have followed you. Say something, I'm giving up on you. I will swallow my pride. You're the one that I love, and I'm saying goodbye. Say something, I'm giving up on you. And I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you. And anywhere I would have followed you. Oh, say something, I'm giving up on you. Say Say something, I'm giving up on you. Say something.
Craig Rochelle is one of my favorite speakers. I love to listen to his messages. And a few years back, he had shared a message on adultery. And I found it fascinating because he had a way of approaching adultery differently. He wanted people to be aware of the things that sort of lead us into adultery. And because he felt like that was the best way to deal with the sin of adultery, just to avoid it as much as possible. And he started talking about sort of a how-to guide. But he did it backwards. He said, you know what? Let's just talk about how you could get on the path to committing adultery. Let's look for a surefire way that will destroy your marriage and just end everything. So today I'd like to look at it in that same sort of way because it was an enlightening thing to me. But the steps I'm going to share may be slightly different from the ones that Mr. Groeschel shared. See, the first thing, though, that we would agree on, Craig and I, the first thing that you should do if you want to commit adultery is stop communicating. Just stop. Actually, don't talk about your feelings. Don't talk about your dreams. Never ask your spouse, hey, how are you doing? How was your day today? Stop saying thank you. Don't ask what their opinions are. Don't interact with them at all if you can help it. And if you do, make sure that it's condescending. Belittle them as much as possible. Whenever they talk, you know what? Double up. Do the hand puppet thing because they'll love this. Hey, why don't you ever talk to me about this? Hey, why don't you share your feelings with me? Don't I matter? Make sure that you always use the hand puppet when they're talking because they'll love that. Ephesians 4:29 says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Now, a key part of this verse here in Ephesians is that when you're talking with someone, when you're talking with your spouse, that you should build them up according to their needs, not yours. Their needs. That means when I talk with my wife, I should be thinking, how can I communicate with my wife in such a way that will meet her needs? How can I take actions that in some way will help her? What can I do that long term will benefit her? So if you want to commit adultery, you make sure you steer as clear of that idea as you possibly can. Make sure that you are never helpful. Give them blank answers that mean nothing. They'll love that too. And if you ignore them enough, and if you belittle them enough, and you treat them like garbage enough, they will absolutely become a shell of the person that you married. And you'll immediately start to look for a replacement. The second thing you need to do if you want to commit adultery is be passive about your marriage. Be passive. Stop dating your spouse. Stop remembering anniversaries. Don't think about her birthday. Stop all of that. Just always assume everything in your marriage is fine. No matter the yelling, no matter the complaining, just assume it's fine. Ephesians 5:25 says that husbands should love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And earlier verses say that wives should submit to and respect their husbands. So do the opposite. Whatever you do, make sure that you are not building each other up in that way. Make sure that you never put your spouse's needs above your own. You are number one and treat yourself that way. Make sure that whatever you do, wives, that you are not respecting your husbands. Treat them like the scum of the earth that they are. Make sure that you treat them like the biggest mistake of your life. And husbands, do the same for your wives. Treat them like an anchor. Whatever you do, don't put any work into loving them. Don't care about their dreams, and you'll be well on your way to adultery. The third thing you can do if you want to commit adultery, totally abandon self-care. Let yourself way go. So, did your husband marry someone with the perfect smoking hot body? Make sure that you do none of the things that maintain that. stop going to the gym, stop eating right, even if you are completely physically capable of doing it, which a lot of us aren't as we get older, and I understand that. But even if you're physically capable, make sure you don't do it. And wives, did you marry a guy that was dedicated to the gym? He went faithfully. He made sure that the six-pack did not become the keg. Make sure he goes all the way. Make him the fridge, okay? Past the keg. Make him the whole fridge. Don't make budgets. Don't bathe regularly. Don't take care of yourself. Don't sleep right. Stop eating right. Stop following God. Stop going to church. And then if you want to really go the whole 9 yards on that, make sure that you expect your spouse to do the things you're not doing. Say, you know what? You really shouldn't be just sitting down on the couch right now. You should be working out, and you should be eating a salad, not the steak, the salad. I'm going to sneak this bag of Doritos and ketchup on Facebook while you're doing that. Proverbs 13:4 says that the slacker craves, yet has nothing, but the diligent is fully satisfied. Do you see a pattern starting to develop? Whatever Scripture says, do the opposite. Do the opposite. If you want to commit adultery, do the opposite of what Scripture tells you. Be a slacker. Make sure that neither you nor your spouse are ever satisfied. That way, you will both be ready to commit adultery. Finally, there's a capstone achievement. There is a really high thing that you can do if you want to commit adultery, and that's to continue to put yourself in compromising positions and places. Make sure that you rearrange your work schedule so that you are always working with that certain guy or that certain girl. Make sure that you do whatever it takes to always make it to that one club at that one time with the perfect excuse to be there. Make sure that you hang out in that secret internet chat room. Make sure that you keep all your social media burner accounts available. Make sure that you keep lots of secrets. Because see, 1 Corinthians 15:33 says that bad company corrupts good character. So if you want to commit adultery, you need to be the worst of the worst. So make sure that you find the most despicable human beings that you can, find out where they hang out, and then go hang out with them. Because eventually, you will sink to their level. Adultery, not going to be far behind. So, now that you know some easy steps to commit adultery, let's be real for a minute. Adultery is a damaging endeavor. In fact, I'm going to use the Message to describe something, the Message version of the Bible, because I think the wording kind of hits home. Proverbs 5:3-6 says that the lips of a seductive woman or man are oh so sweet. Her soft words are oh so smooth. But it won't be long before she's gravel in your mouth, a pain in your gut, a wound in your heart. She's dancing down the primrose path to death. She's headed straight for hell, and she's taking you with her. She hasn't got a clue about real life, about who she is, or he is, or where she's going. Now, if you've already been following some of the steps of the How to Commit Adultery guide, maybe you've already run into somebody that might be the adulterous man or the adulterous woman one day. And you may have realized that everything they do kind of seems perfect. They compliment you, they build you up. Everything that comes out of their mouth talking about you is positive. They are always looking for ways to make you look good. They laugh at your awful jokes. That's a really powerful sign, by the way. And even as he moves down the confusing path, she's dancing. He's dancing. Everything seems good. See, the only problem with the adulterous man or woman is that if they are willing to cheat with you against your spouse, how willing do you think they'll be to cheat on you? And how faithful will they actually be with you? Are they really as perfect as they seem? Or when you get closer and closer and closer to them, when you spend more time with them, when you start to do sinful things with them, will you start to see an uglier side of them? Will you start to see that they're not everything they seem to be? Will their sweetness turn to a pain in your gut, a wound in your heart? That's what the Bible says is going to happen. Has anyone ever had gravel in your mouth? Maybe you were running a jackhammer, maybe you were shoveling in your garden, and you got some gravel just flew up and hit you in the mouth. What's the first thing you want to do? Somebody over there did it. Spit it out. It's gross. Get this out of my mouth. That's what it's going to be like, except it's really hard to spit this gravel out. When you fall in with a person like this, you start to think that your life is actually improving. This is a match made in heaven. You go through this honeymoon phase of thinking like everything is good now. But they're actually escorting you somewhere else. And your sin will ensure that the gates of hell are waiting. See, there's an old classic rock joke that in this context isn't really that funny. It's actually very serious. And it says that there is a stairway to heaven, but a highway to hell. And I think that that is honestly very true of marriage. Because I think that if you want to have a marriage that is worthwhile and lasting and something that brings value to you and your spouse and brings joy to every part of your life, it is a stairway. You have to get up every morning ready to climb the next step together. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to push, and it's going to be difficult, but it will be rewarding. Or you could go back to our how-to guide and say, nah, that's a lot of work. I'm going to skip the stairs. I'm just going to put it on cruise control. I want easy way. So we stop putting work into our marriage and we go down the highway. And we get an express ride to the end of our marriage. And that ride is no fun. It may be easy, but it's not fun. Because adultery comes with an enormous cost. I often think, what would it be like if I cheated? What would the consequences of me doing that be? Because we tend to think we're just hurting one person, right? But what would really be the consequences? Who would I hurt? What would happen? I would hurt everyone in this room. I would hurt everyone watching online. Everyone that's part of our community here, because you haven't trusted someone that you at first didn't know, with no fancy letters after their name, to be a spiritual authority, to speak to you. You've given me that opportunity. And if I would cheat, I would hurt all of you, because now you have to take everything I said with a grain of salt. In fact, you have to disregard a lot of the things I said, and I talk about God a lot. So now you've got to disregard things I've said about God because you can no longer trust me. So I hurt all of you. I hurt my parents and all of you who are here that have shown to me what a marriage of 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 years can look like when done right. Because they're going to look at me and say, you should have known better. This can be done. It's hard, but it's so worth it. You shouldn't have known. I'd hurt them. I would hurt the heart of God without a doubt. Because if I would cheat on my wife, who God created with all of her beauty, with all of her perfections, with all of her wonderful attitude, and all her imperfections, if I would cheat on her, I'm basically saying, God, she's not good enough. She's not good enough. Your work isn't good enough. And obviously, I would hurt and devastate my wife and kids. I cannot imagine having that conversation with them. I couldn't look them in the eye and say that something was better than them. I would absolutely rather die. And I know many of you would feel the same. I find that if I remind myself of those consequences often, if I keep them always in front of me, that when I am tempted, I am much quicker to put up the shields. I am much quicker to get out of Dodge because I know how dangerous the temptation is. In fact, Proverbs 5:7-14 tells me to do exactly that. I'm not going to read through it, but it tells us that we should always consider the consequences of what action you're about to take and run away. It doesn't say brace yourself. It doesn't say toughen up. It doesn't say steel yourselves for what's to come. It doesn't say try to power through the situation. It doesn't even say to do good things like stop and pray. It doesn't say gather people around you. It says run away. It's not worth it. It is never worth it. That is not a winning fight. It is time to leave. Run away. See, anything at all that threatens your marriage should get notice that your vows, your wedding vows, run deep within you. That when you said, I do, honey, I will love you forever. I will love you in richer or poorer, in easy and in hard, that you meant it. And one of the best things you can do for your marriage is pray for your spouse that they can also have that strength, that the vows would run deep within them as well. Now, I would love to end there. I really would, because I feel like that's a well-rounded message. It's been awkward enough, but I can't. Because I know that there are many people listening to this today, whether here in the room or online, that have been hurt by the sin of adultery. You've been betrayed. You've been hurt. And for that, I am sorry. I know that because we are not a perfect church. We never will be until Jesus comes. So I feel like I need to encourage you today that even if a spouse has betrayed you, God has not. He loves you, sees your worth, sees your value. You are his child once and forever. 1 John 3:1 says, see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Spouses that know God know what value he places in marriage. Spouses that know God know how much their husband or wife is worth in God's eyes. You may have things to work on. You may have made mistakes, but you will have worth because you are a child of God. Maybe today, you're the one that committed adultery. Maybe that's you and you're feeling miserable right now. The Bible is clear. Adultery is a valid reason for divorce. It is hurtful to the heart of God. It is 100% categorically sin. But you are not condemned. You are not doomed. The law says that the adulterer is in trouble, but you are not condemned. See, if a spouse is courageous, there's a chance that they will give you forgiveness. They might be just so crazy bold to say, you know what, I know you did this, but I'll forgive you. They may give you a second chance, they may not. But God will. God will give you the second chance. In John chapter 8, some religious leaders are preparing to stone a woman caught in the act of adultery. They're preparing to stone her because that is honestly what they did in those days. When you committed adultery, it wasn't a personal thing. You didn't just sin against your husband or wife. You sinned against the whole community. You put a stain on your whole community, and they found ways to get rid of you because they didn't want that kind of person in their community. So they were going to stone her and kill her. And then they saw Jesus, and he was going to be walking by, and they thought, man, this is great, because they didn't like Jesus. They didn't like Jesus at all. They thought he got in the way. He was always up in their business. So they thought, man, we'll take care of two things at once. And they say, hey, Jesus, come over here. Now the law says that we should stone a woman or man caught in adultery, that we should stone someone caught in adultery, what do you say? So Jesus did something very cool, as Jesus always did. He made them wait. He got down, he drew some pictures in the sand, and I think he threw them off balance a lot like some of you may be feeling right now, like get on with it, John. But he sat there. And then he finally said, let anyone with no sin cast the first stone. The story continues in John 8:9-11. When the accusers heard that, when they heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Now I have heard this verse, I'm going to pause there. I have heard this verse hundreds of times. I've heard this story, and last night I read it as if I had read it for the first time. And maybe some of you are much more astute biblical scholars than me, because I realized something here. For the first time, I said, you know what? Why is Jesus still with the woman and everyone else had left? And then I realized the only person in that crowd capable of throwing that stone was Jesus. He was the only one without sin. The only person that met his own qualifications was Jesus. Jesus is still in the crowd. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Did not even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And that's why this is powerful. Then Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. When Jesus said it, it was a man who had no sin that had every right to throw the stone. But he didn't. Jesus didn't say that adultery wasn't a sin. And he didn't even say that, man, stoning someone for adultery, that kind of seems over the top. He didn't say that. He may have even felt that the punishment fit the crime. He didn't say that the law didn't apply. He didn't say that the woman was innocent. What did he do? He told her to go and sin no more. He took a death row inmate and said, I'm giving you a second chance. Do you have any idea what that meant to that woman? And that is what Jesus wants to do for you today. So to recap, if you want to protect your marriage, if you don't want to get on to the path of adultery, even if you're not married, but you're thinking about getting married one day and you're saying, man, how is it possible to live with one human being for life? Don't you get tired of them? Don't they become a nuisance? Here's how you can start. Number one, put God in the middle of your marriage. Marriage always takes three. It sounds colloquial, it sounds dumb, but it is 100% true. It takes three. It takes you, your spouse, and God in the middle. It will always take three. See, God is not swayed by the emotional roller coaster that marriage can be when you feel love for someone or you don't feel love for someone. He isn't swayed. He is the same. When challenges come, he's not surprised. He says, I will get through this with you. He will sustain you when marriage is toughest. Number two, be determined to love your spouse every day before your feet hit the floor. Wake up determined. Fight for it. And if you want a guide on how to do that, I suggest starting in 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. It's a set of verses that talks about love is patient, love is kind. Put your names in. John is going to be patient with Janelle. John is going to be kind to Janelle. Maybe you're not married. Still do it. I am going to be patient with my future spouse. Drill it into your head because you'll need it. Number three, know the consequences of adultery. See, anytime God says, don't do something, it isn't so that he is safe. It isn't because God is trying to keep something good from you. It's because he's trying to keep you from hurting yourself. He's trying to keep you from burning yourself on the stove. He's trying to protect you and those around you. So be aware of the ramifications of what you're doing. Number 4, stay away from people and places that make you vulnerable. You all know what those are for each of you. They're always different for everybody. Stay away. Stay away. Don't hang out with people that are trying their best to help you sin. They're easy to find. Don't hang out with people that are trying to help you walk the wrong path. This is easy to say. I can say this, and I can even hear myself saying this and think, yeah, that sounds easy. We can all nod our head in agreement, so it's a good idea, but it is so incredibly difficult to do, and it gets harder and harder every year, it seems. But if you really want to avoid adultery, if you really are committed to your marriage, then you have to do it. You have to draw a line and say, I'm not going to that place because I'm weak when I'm there. Instead, surround yourself with people that are looking for the right path, that are trying to follow God, that are trying to help you deal with the temptations that come, that are trying to keep you in a good way. Hang out with them. They won't be helping you sin. Now, after hearing today's message, if you're single, if you're unmarried, you may be thinking, man, I wasn't sure about marriage before, and now I really don't want to get married. It is a lot. And honestly, some of that fear is good. You need to be very careful who you choose. Very, very careful. Make one choice and make it right as much as you can. Some of that fear is real. But some of that fear is also a lie. Because we've been sold a bill of sale that says you can have meaningful relationship that's just as good as marriage without the commitment. That is a lie, and it's not helpful. Because a marriage and the commitment that comes with it is what fuels it and makes it so powerful. When you cut out the commitment, it becomes a convenience. The commitment means that when Jesus committed to you, Jesus jumped in with both feet. He said, I'm willing to die for that relationship with you. I am willing to jump in the whole way. And that's kind of a model for what our marriages could look like. And if somebody's just towing the water, it's not the same. We can call it whatever we want, friends with benefits, living together, whatever it is, it's not the same. It never will be. Marriage is hard, but it's incredibly rewarding. Because when you have confidence that your spouse is pursuing your marriage as hard as you are, it leads to some incredible things. Incredible things that you can work through together, things that would destroy friends with benefits because they would just give up. You will make it through. And for those of us who are married, I encourage you to do something that I am doing and I hope that I will continue to do forever. Fight for your marriage. Fight. Fight. Because you may feel like your marriage is dead and gone. You might have come in today and you're like, man, this is really heavy because I'm struggling. I have felt for years like my marriage is dead. Like it's been buried, that it is underground, it is so far down. We're just waiting for the right time to end it. I encourage you, you serve a God here today that specializes in things that are dead and putting life back into them and pulling them out. That's what he does. That is who he is. And when the whole world and all your fears and all your anxieties and all your doubts are telling you your marriage is so far down, it is over, it's dead, gone, God's saying, I think I can still hear a pulse. I think there's still a little hope in that. And God says, if you take my hand, wife, if you take my hand, husband, if you take my hand, and you walk with me, we're going to walk out of this grave together and your marriage will be better than before.
I've been watching you, child, still learning to love, just starting to grow. And I am waiting here now. Will you open your heart? I've been here all alone. You say I'm not giving up on you. You say I'm still running after you. Everywhere I've been there with you. Child, I will never give up on you. Yeah. You say I'm not giving up on you. You say I'm still running after you. And everywhere I've been there with you. Child, I will never give up on you. Child, I will never give up on you. Child, I have given my heart to you. Oh, child, I have given my heart to you. Child, I will never give up on you.
God, today I know that this message is weighty. It has weight to it. But Lord, I thank you that today this is the opportunity to recognize things that we need to fix, things that I need to fix in my marriage and in our marriages. And Lord, to not approach this with doom and gloom, to not approach this with hurt and shame, but to say, when we walk out of this room, time starts again. Now we can make it right. God, take our hands, walk us out of the tombs, walk us out of the confusion, keep us on a good path. We take your hand today, we walk with you in faith. We can all get better. We can all have stronger marriages. We can all deal with our sin better. We can all trust you more. So Lord, help us to do that today together. Even if we're socially distant, our hearts are one with you. And Lord, help us to experience that and know that as we wrap up here today. In your name, amen. Just a reminder that if you're leaving today and you want to contribute a check or cash and you want to drop it, there are 2 black boxes over here on tables. You're more than welcome to use those. Also, if you'd like to congregate around the table outside, there's some canopies set up, and we call that the connection zone. There's some water bottles. If you just want to chill and be around other humans for a little while, that's your opportunity to do that. Feel free to have a conversation in a safe area. We're going to have another worship song now as we wrap up. I encourage you to sing along or join with it.
God, I pray that whatever is shaming us today, whatever is in our past, whatever has maybe stolen our joy or our hope, whatever is in the way of our marriages, our home life. Lord, I pray that you would remind us that no matter how dead it seems, no matter how far buried it seems, Lord God, you specialize in bringing life to what seems lifeless.
Shame is a prison as cruel as a grave. Shame is a robber and he has come to take my name. Oh, love is my redeemer, lifting me up from the ground. Love is the power where my freedom song is found. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Yeah. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Oh, fear is a liar with a smooth and velvet tongue. Oh, fear is a tyrant, he's always telling me to run. Oh, love is resurrection, and love is a trumpet sound. Love is my weapon, I'm gonna take my giants down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. When I hear that trumpet sound, I'm gonna rise up out of the ground. There ain't no grave gonna hold my body down. Sing it out with me. There was a battle, a war between death and life. Oh, there on a tree, the Lamb of God was crucified. He went on down to hell, he took back every key. He rose up as a lion, now he's setting all captives free. There ain't no grave could hold his body down. Yeah. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. Yeah. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. Yeah. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. Oh yeah. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. Oh, if you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. If you walked out of the grave, I'm walking too. There ain't no grave could hold his body down. Yeah. There ain't no grave could hold his body down. When he heard that trumpet sound, he rose up out of the ground. There ain't no grave could hold his body down. Sing it out. There ain't no grave could hold his body down.
You can rise like he rose.
God, I'm on my knees again. God, I'm begging, please again. I need you. Oh, I need you. Walking down this desert road, water for my thirsty soul. I need you. Oh, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears, like holy water on my skin. Dead men walking slave to sin. I wanna know about being born again. I need you. Oh God, I need you. So take me to the riverside. Take me under, baptize. I need you. Oh God, I need you. Your forgiveness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears, like holy
Nothing can hold us back, nothing can tear us apart. Not life, not death, not the in-between, this is just the start. Don't let them keep you down, don't let them push you out. We were made to live, to be fierce like lions, love and forgive. Just keep moving on, just keep pushing ahead. Yeah, the new has come, all the old is dead. Just keep moving on, keep your eyes on the prize, and that word in your heart, yeah, we'll be alright. We got that, we got that, we got that, yeah, we'll be alright. Yeah, we're running out the darkness, chasing down the dead of night. We're bringing hope to the streets. There's a new way, a better life. Only one can set the captive free. He's bringing sight back to the blind, show the lame how to walk, and make the dead alive. Just keep moving on, just keep pushing ahead. Yeah, the new has come, all the old is dead. Just keep moving on, keep your eyes on the prize, and that word in your heart, yeah, we'll be alright. We got that, we got that, we got that, yeah, we'll be alright. We got that, we got that, we got that, yeah, we'll be alright. We got that Holy Ghost power, we got our hearts set on love. We got that Holy Ghost power, we keep our eyes fixed above. We got that Holy Ghost power, we got our hearts set on love. We got that Holy Ghost power, we keep our eyes fixed above.